Hi guys, it's Ahsante, and today I'm here with Reed.
Hi guys, my name is Reed, and I make videos on my channel called I'll Roll With It, and I make videos primarily about being trans, my experiences with that, but also sometimes fun challenges or vlogs or whatever.
We met because we were both a part of the Less Than Famous panel at VidCon, and now we're going to talk about intersectionality. How do you define intersectionality?
What privileges you have or don't have, and how that relates to minorities, being a minority, and how you can take on multiple identities at once and be multiple minorities at once and multiple privileges at once, and the groups you're part of.
Yeah, the groups you're part of, and also that like privilege isn't something to be ashamed of, but it's just something to be aware of.
Yes.
So that when you're discussing these topics, you're not leaving people out.
Yes.
You know, like that's the point.
Good, I'm glad we
agree
on that.
Yeah. Now for a couple of our identifiers.
Being trans, it's been hard, and I've gone through a lot of different identities in the process. So 5 years ago, if you asked me how I identified, I would have identified my gender as female. And then I decided that I was queer. I was genderqueer. I had no gender. I didn't align with any gender. And then I started identifying as a trans man. In the past year or so, it's been sort of interesting for me to come into this identity of just man, dropping the trans. And how I present myself in different spaces, and how in some spaces I definitely own the trans part of being a man, and in other spaces I kind of drop the trans and I just you know, see myself as a man. So man or trans man, definitely. I don't really identify my sexual orientation. I don't like to put a label on it. I guess if I had to, if I was setting up a dating profile, I would probably put queer. But I don't enjoy labels.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
They're not great.
Yeah, that's fair. I am a black woman. Pretty much always identified that way. I think the labeler of race can sometimes be an issue. I prefer black, or black American, just because it's something that emphasizes the legacy from which I come. Because, you know, I am American first, I think. Some people take African American, I think, to tie too much to like a foreign aspect. Go back to Africa. It's like, I'm not from there.
I am from here.
Right. So, and I think it also speaks to like a collective experience in a way that doesn't generalize an African experience, because there are so many different regions and countries and peoples. So, and along those lines, it's time for us to check our privilege.
I'm excited about this.
Educational privilege, check. White privilege,
check.
Male privilege,
check.
Class privilege, check. Christian privilege, check. Able-bodied, check. Heterosexual, check. Cisgender, check.
We have a lot of privileges.
We do, we do. And it makes you realize,
I know. Well, that's what I like about talking about privilege, is because you can get so sucked into like one part of your identity. It just opens it up to kind of see the bigger picture.
There's actually a move by my friend Alexandria started it to make a disabilities panel at VidCon. Because like,
that's awesome.
That's an aspect of identity experience that is overlooked a lot of the time. A social issue that you feel is really important to consider through the lens of intersectionality, especially within your identity.
I don't even have to think about this. I go to a conference every year in Philadelphia about trans health. And while I was there, a trans woman of color was murdered, and it was in June, and it was probably the 10th one of the year. And I was reading about it on my way home with my dad, who is cis and white and holds a lot of privilege. He was confused. And he was specifically confused about why they were being killed. And I was confused about his confusion. So, you know, not acknowledging that there's a race problem in America is detrimental. First of all, but there's also, it ties in just so much with being trans. The bottom line is that it's not safe to be a trans woman of color. in America today. I don't know what else to say about it other than it's real, it's a huge problem, and we're not talking about it enough.
Mm-hmm. The wage gap is different for different people, right? Like if you're talking about like white women, then like that's one thing. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about Black women, Latinos, and then the unemployment rates as well, they're just such wider gaps.
Yes.
People talk about the education gap as well. Mm-hmm. With, you know, whites and Blacks and Latinos, and then you have like undocumented people. And you know, it's just like so many different experiences that you have to consider when you're talking about these gaps in resources.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to get stuck on one type of experience, and I think a lot of people right now are really stuck on like white men versus white women.
Yeah.
And when you think wage gap, that's what people go to.
That's the statistic, like the 70%, which is a lot more.
It's a lot more complex than just 70%.
Yeah. Someone else's experience that we've found really enlightening as far as how we think about intersectionality.
So my cousin, who I'm not going to say her name because she is not public on the internet, she is a student at an Ivy League school, and she is Black. She has had the experience of a lifetime. She's been targeted by the administration and by groups on campus, and for speaking out publicly and holding certain political views about Ferguson, and when all that started happening, and she started going to protests and rallies and got targeted, and her experience has shed so much light on what it's like to be a Black woman, and especially a Black woman at an Ivy League school, and hearing about the things that happen to her every day, and hearing about the things that I don't experience because of the privilege that I hold being white and the male privilege that I now hold. Listening to her experience has been life-changing for me, honestly. Someone's
experience that I heard of, it was actually through a YouTube video. Jack Bird, who was answering a question, was saying, he was watching this panel or on this panel where they were talking about privileges that they felt that they had gained transitioning from female to male. A lot of the white people were like, oh yeah, like I'm treated more seriously, like I feel more comfortable walking down the street. And then a lot of the Black guys were like, I actually feel less comfortable, I receive more harassment. It just brought in being a Black man versus a white man, and like how you're perceived by others, and how you are targeted by the police, and how comfortable you feel walking down the street. To hear that intersection, I thought was really, impactful. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah, I hadn't either. That's another thing though, is like, I have this tunnel vision, you know, because my experience being trans, being white is so much different.
Yeah.
From, you know, someone who has transitioned from female to male and is Black. Like, you know, sometimes you get these blinders on and you're like, well, I know what it's like to be trans. You know, but I don't know what it's like.
Yeah, there's such diversity of experiences, which is why intersectionality is important.
Yes.
So,
moral of the story.
Moral of the story. Intersectionality.
Talk about it.
Yeah, talk about it. Have these conversations. I hope this video has gotten you thinking. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. Definitely be down there, and thank you so much, Reed.
Yeah, thank you
for joining me. As always, remember to live spiritedly and think creatively, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.